Good night, everyone. So now we're going to talk about how the IRS makes examples out of tax evaders. I know I'm a little late, but that's okay. I still really wanted to come on because this is super important. So we're going to talk about tax avoidance and tax evasion. So before we can understand how the IRS makes examples out of tax evaders, let's understand the differences between tax avoidance and tax evasion. What is even the difference? All right, tax avoidance is when a taxpayer takes the necessary steps to reduce or to minimize their tax liability. That is totally legal. That's basically using all the tax loopholes to reduce your taxes. Tax evasion, on the other hand, is willfully underpaying your taxes or not paying your taxes, right? So there's kind of a thin line between both of them, but the major difference is that one's okay and one's not okay. So it is your responsibility as the taxpayer to report all of your income. You have to report all your income. That's your responsibility. That's not your accountant's responsibility. That's your responsibility as a taxpayer. So when you don't report all your income, when you decide not to deposit a check that you just received for a job in your business bank account, you deposit it in your personal bank account without even transferring it over, that's because you decided you're not going to report it. That's tax evasion. When you decide to do a simple job and not report it, however small it is, that's tax evasion. Now, tax avoidance, you report everything, but you take advantage of credits, you take advantage of deductions to reduce your tax liability. Now, I'm going to give you some construction-specific examples of tax evasion and tax avoidance to help you to understand the differences between both of them. So we're going to talk about tax evasion first. So the illegal one, tax evasion. If you are an S Corp and you're not running payroll, not because you don't know that you should be running payroll, but because you don't want to pay the employer portion of payroll taxes, then that's tax evasion. Right off the bat, that's tax evasion. So you're willfully not paying your taxes. You're willfully underpaying your taxes. Let's say you hire a contractor, an independent contractor. You have this person on a 1099 instead of a W-2. But this person has been with you. This is an individual and not a business. This person has been with you for a very long time. And based on the duties and responsibilities that this person has, it would be obvious if you were to be audited that this person is an employee and not a contractor. That's tax evasion. Again, not paying the employer part of your payroll taxes. And as I said before, not depositing into your business bank account money that you would have made from your business because you don't report it, it's not there. So even if you do have a bookkeeper or an accountant, if you don't report it, they have nothing to put on paper that you made, right? So that's tax evasion. Now that all those I just mentioned, those are illegal activities. Tax avoidance, the one that's okay to do, it's okay to avoid paying taxes as long as you report everything. So using those very same examples, If you're an S Corp and you're running your payroll, you're using the payroll expenses to reduce your tax liability. See the difference? So instead of not paying those taxes, you are paying those taxes to help your debt, your tax debt. That's the right way. Another way, you decide to hire that person as an employee. Again, you employ them, you will have to pay the employer part of payroll taxes. You may even throw in a couple of benefits. Those are tax deductible. So you're using those to reduce your tax liability. And then reporting all your income. So you're not withholding any of those deposits, any of those checks that you received from your jobs. You're putting everything in your business. But then you sit and you're like, okay, your tax accountant is going to sit with you and be like, what has happened in your life? What's going on in your life that we can use to reduce your taxes? Do you have a mortgage? Did you take out a loan? Can we use the interest from that loan to reduce your taxes? Do you have kids? Can we get a credit for you having kids? Things like those. Not everybody knows that you're able to utilize those. Where are you conducting your business activities? All this is legal stuff. This is not, everything is on the books, not on the table, not off the books. You're reporting everything, but then you're saying, oh, but I have these that I can use to reduce how much I owe you. Right? So what happens if you decide to be a tax evader? What happens if you decide to go the illegal route? What kind of an example can the IRS make of you? And I'm going to talk about some celebrities, some very popular people who have been convicted of tax evasion. So the most recent one is all over the news. Todd and Julie Chrisley, huge public figures, and they have been convicted of bank and tax fraud and also conspiracy to defraud the IRS of tens of millions of dollars. And the hardest part about this is they're not just being fined financially, they're going to prison for years, not even just 2 years, not even just a year. Todd's going away for 12 years. Julie's going away for 7 years. Of course, they're denying the charges, but based on the evidence that the IRS say that they have based on the case, they're tax evaders, right? These people have kids, they have families. So even though we see them on the television, we see them on social media, there are people like you and I, they have families, they've been working hard their entire lives. They've worked so hard to build wealth for their families, and then maybe they didn't think about certain things, and now the IRS knocking on their doors, we're gonna audit you, something looks sketchy, something looks fishy, it looks like you're not reporting all your income, we're gonna dig into your finances. We're going to see what's going on. What's the story that your finances are telling? What's the story? And so maybe even you never thought about having good records. You never thought about bookkeeping. It's like, once a year thing. You never thought about reporting all your income, even if it's $200, even if it's just a house call. You didn't think to report that. But then imagine if you have several house calls in a year that total over $600 from one person. And then that income gets reported to the IRS. When you file, you don't include that in your taxes. You're denying ever making that money. You don't deposit it in your bank account. You just do it under the bushes. It gets reported and you don't report it. These are the kind of inconsistencies that piques the IRS's interest into thinking that somebody is a tax evader. So imagine all your life, you think that you're doing everything right. You're eventually going to get to your bookkeeping. You're eventually going to get to your accounting. You'll get to it. You'll get to it. You put it off. You put it off. Not thinking that your entire family are resting on your shoulders. Not thinking that if the IRS does come knocking, they could potentially say that everything that you've worked for, you've worked so hard for, it's now they're saying you're a fraud. Your life's work is a sham. You're all over the news. Your family and friends turn their noses at you. And then some of you stop going to church. And if you have kids, it's even more difficult for the kids because adults can get over things. I mean, it may take some time, but adults will get over things. But kids, especially if they're in high school, it's very hard for them. So just think about that. Just because you keep putting off having your bookkeeping updated month to month so that you can even try to understand what's going on with your finances, and you keep putting off having a good accountant just because you didn't think it was important enough. And then that happens. Not thinking you can get audited all the time. All right, so that's it for Todd and Julie Chrisley. The next celebrity who was convicted of tax evasion was Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes, yes, he is famous for a lot of action movies, but if I'm not mistaken, the early 2000s, the Blade series, I think that's probably those series were probably the ones that, you know, gave him his huge following. But famous actor convicted of tax evasion. Not just that, but he did 2.5 years in prison because of tax evasion. 2.5 years in prison. He has a family too. Lauryn Hill, she was also convicted of tax evasion. And not only did she have a hefty 21 million fine, plus paying for the back taxes, she also went away for 2 years in prison. Yep. And then another one, Nicolas Cage. Ghost Rider, Nicolas Cage. He didn't go to prison, but the IRS filed a lien against him. And by the time he paid his debt, they removed it. But that is still a form of tax evasion, not paying your taxes. So how can you be on the other side? That's what happens if you're a tax evader. You don't pay your taxes, how far it can go. You can get a large fine. You can go to prison. Some people even get a combination of prison and house arrest or probation. Yeah, probation. So some people get a combination. Some people just get a couple months. But this is how they can make an example. Yep. How can you then go on the other side? How can you be a tax avoider and not a tax evader? How can you be legit? How can you be strategic with your taxes? You're doing everything right. You're reporting everything. you're keeping all your records. How can you do everything right? The first thing, always the first thing is to get a bookkeeper to keep your finances organized. Get a bookkeeper, get an accountant. That's the first thing, always the first thing. With everything, that's the first thing. Next, report all your income. Deposit all your money in your bank account. Report all your income. Doesn't matter how small it is, even if it's cash, report it. And then finally, keep records. Keep records in a folder on your computer, back it up on an external drive. However you decide to store it, keep records of all your deductions and your credits. And it's always good to do it by year. So you can even say, so let's say, for example, you took a couple of deductions last year, for argument's sake. You have a folder on your computer that says 2021, and then you can even date them if you want. You can date them if you want, just to keep it a little bit more organized. But keep a folder. And what you can do as well is keep a list. So in addition to the folder, you can have like a Word document, a Google Doc with everything that you are deducting, so that if you do have to pull things up, you know exactly what it is. And that's even something that I do personally. Like for every single year I file my taxes, I have what it is that I deduct, especially because every year it gets a little bit more complicated. So I do have a list, even for my own self. I'm not telling you anything that I'm not doing. I have a list of all my deductions. So if the IRS comes knocking on my door, here's my evidence. This is my proof. This is my support. Right? So you don't have to be a tax evader. I know sometimes it's scary thinking about all the money that you're going to have to pay in taxes, but there are strategies to make sure that you have enough funds when it's time to pay your taxes. There are strategies, but of course, you're going to have to get that professional help to help you implement those strategies so that you don't have to be anxious. You don't have to be afraid of tax season. You don't have to be afraid. You literally, once you have the right people on your team, you don't have to be afraid. Once everything is in you're only afraid, you're only anxious just because things are not in order. That's the only reason you're afraid. If everything was in order, you have nothing to worry about. Everything's in order. You have the money. You pay it on time. There's nothing to worry about. What would you be worrying about if everything was in order? Nothing. But the moment you're on the other side, the moment you're being an avoider, and the moment you stop being an evader, the moment you start being an avoider, it's a different feeling. You'll become so calm. You'll probably be excited. Yes, you will probably be excited because then you'll be like, oh, now I can get a bonus. Because I thought I was going to pay this much, but I didn't pay that much. So now I can get a bonus. So then you're probably going to start loving tax season because you get a bonus. So if you're ready to be on the right track, if you're ready to be a tax avoider, if you're ready to work with me, I've included in the link, the description, to schedule your free strategy session. And if you have already decided that you would want to work with me, I've added the link for that as well so that we can schedule your onboarding. Tax season is right around the corner. It is less than a month away. It's just a couple weeks. And we are offering 30% off bookkeeping cleanup services until December 31st. So if you want to lock in that special, you have to lock it in by December 31st. Be a tax avoider, not a tax evader, because the IRS just might decide to make an example out of you. Good night, guys.